Afternoon, everyone. It's Coram and Ed Carson with a breakdown of the action in today's session, Wednesday, December 13th, where we saw strong gains across the board for the major indexes, getting to more key levels on the upside, Ed, as investors now look ahead to potential rate cuts in 2024 after the latest Fed headlines out today.
Yeah, really strong day. The market really wasn't going anywhere until the Fed, but boy, did it go after that. I want to take a look at three stocks: Vertex Pharmaceuticals, Eli Lilly, and Samsara.
Okay, we'll take a look at those three stocks, but first, let's take a closer look at the major indexes. The Nasdaq, Dow, and the S&P 500 all up 1.4% by session's close. Small caps, the Russell 2000 with an even stronger day, up 3.4%. We'll get to all those charts. Let's first take a look at the Nasdaq because as growth investors, we do follow this one the closest. So here's a look at the Nasdaq. We were talking about the notable milestone in yesterday's session with it getting to a high for the year, joining the S&P 500 and Dow. But this market rally is strengthening here, Ed, and it was already strong.
Yeah, really strong. Now the Nasdaq and S&P are sort of decisively above this recent range, 2023 highs. We were wondering, can it get past the door? Yes, it's past the door. You never know if it comes scurrying back in, but now it feels like we're starting another leg potentially in a rally. We're moving up. There's not a lot of resistance except for the all-time highs at this point, and really some strong action. Today, the Fed came out and said we expect. They have this thought, like the policymakers indicated 3 rate cuts are on order for 2024. Back in September, they were just looking for 1 cut. Markets, which had expected 4 or 5 cuts, now they expect 6. Wow. So they're like, we'll see how that all plays out, but there was just a huge tailwind. We'll look at other things. Weren't a whole lot of stocks to buy today, in my opinion. I mean, there were some, but there were some that set up, but I mean, there was nothing wrong. If you were heavily exposed, you probably had a pretty good day without having to do a whole lot. You can just ride the current, and it's a pretty nice trend.
Yeah. Definitely agreed there. And if you look at the NASDAQ 100, that's even stronger. So here's a look at QQQ after a couple of tight weeks, now getting above 400. And so I think this is a closing high, I believe, Ed, for QQQ, if not close to it. So it does look okay. It's just shy of the week of 11/19, closing at 403.99. We're at 403.74. So very, very close here for the NASDAQ 100.
Yeah, and these are some of the biggest names. Obviously, there's been some mega caps that have been leading it, not necessarily so much today, but a lot of power for quite a while. But we saw a lot of breadth. I mean, this was a lot of breadth today. I haven't looked at the advanced decline lines, but a lot of things were moving well. Yeah. The QQEW, the equal weight, that was outperforming the major indexes. Really has come up strong in the last few weeks. And you can see even the RS line, which has sort of lagged for quite a while, is sort of moving up to high, getting up to the higher levels in a while, just sort of ticking higher. A lot of growth stocks are really working right now.
Yeah, so QQEW, the equal weight NASDAQ 100 ETF, up almost 2% today. Let's look at RSP, the equal weight S&P 500 ETF, even stronger, up 2.1% on the verge of a breakout and clearing this long sideways range. Again, like you said, indicating that broadening out underneath the surface, more participation in this market rally. Also, let's look at small caps. I mentioned the strong performance today from IWM. So up 3.4, 3.5% to break out. We were talking about this 190 level, and IWM clearing that today with ease, Ed.
Yeah, and so that's really saying everybody's sort of like joining in right now, it feels like. So, boy, that is a move. When small caps want to go, they can really, really move above a lot of key levels here. All of a sudden, the 2023 highs don't seem far away for the small caps. They've got some distance, but they're not. It doesn't seem crazy that they could get there in short order.
Exactly. Yeah. So now, next level to watch to the upside for the Russell is 2000 for the Russell 2000, previous resistance level this year. So that would be a big hurdle. We'll have to. There aren't that many trading days left in 2023, but we'll have to see what happens either as this year progresses, if this rally progresses, or early next year. What happens with that? And let's take a look at the Dow, because a key milestone here for blue chips here is 0DJIA, closing today above 37,000. And that is an all-time high for the Dow, Ed.
Yeah, it's really, just sort of, hey, all of a sudden this thing just came out to hit. You wouldn't have thought a few weeks ago that this is what was going to be the first to get out there, but really strong rally, a lot of strength in this market. So top to bottom.
Okay. And well, we've got to take a look at treasury yields, because that is important to look at here, Ed, coming off in a pretty big way here today. Now getting close back to that 4% level after almost touching 5% on the 10-year yield in late October.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. That's continuing. The 2-year yield, which is really closely tied to Fed policy, the outlook, that plunged, I think, 25, what was it? Something like 25 basis points today. So that's the lowest in 6 months. So that's coming down quite a bit. And that, it's, if nothing else, and you're seeing in housing, seeing in other things, market rates have come down a lot. The Fed hasn't cut rates, but boy, the market feels the easing already.
Yes, it sure does. Okay, let's rattle off some ETF performance for some different industries, sectors, themes, what have you. Here's a look at SMH continuing the move higher in chips, up 1.2% today. IGV software up 1.1%, hitting a rally high here. Let's go to XLI industrials, breaking out today, up 1.1%. XLF financials, looking extra strong here, outpacing the broad market, up 1.6%, extending the move here. And then one thing, we've got to look at the VIX, Ed. Is this going to crush the party? We're seeing the fear index at its lowest levels since, when was this? Early 2020. So pre-COVID. What does that mean?
Well, it means that people aren't very fearful. I mean, it's like, and when there's no fear in the market, you should probably be a little worried. Again, these are secondary indicators. There's various measures that are showing bullishness get up pretty high. Some are extreme, some are not. They're secondary indicators. You look at the indexes, you look at the leading stocks, and they look great. They look great. But this is a reason to just be like, oh yeah, you should. It's always good to be thinking, not get too excited, to keep a level head and be ready for that. Just be, it wouldn't be a shock to see a pullback, given this would be another indication of that. But it's just one reason there. But still, I think the general trend is still very bullish out there for the market.
It is. And we'll continue to monitor things day by day and make adjustments accordingly with the new information that presents itself. Okay, let's take a look at some interesting stocks underneath the surface from today's session. Vertex Pharmaceuticals, VRTX, a nice pop at the open and extended its gains throughout the day, closing up more than 13%. Massive volume here. This looks like the heaviest volume to the upside in quite a while, Ed, in at least a year here for the stock, breaking out some positive news here, trial results for its painkiller for diabetic nerve pain, fueling a breakout.
Yeah, and it had rallied on that a few weeks ago, then sort of off on some concerns, but boy, it really came out. Early on, there was probably some opportunities, and it's still in buy range, but it does feel like, boy, that was a huge one. But it had steady gains along the way. You could have bought. Obviously, it's in hindsight, that was easy because the Fed's coming out. It's going to be your friend, but you didn't know that. But you certainly could have bought it along the way as it was breaking out, or even just as it was, earlier on in the day. You could still buy it here, but you might wait to see if it pauses, forges a high handle. We've seen that with some things. That would be one way to go here. Nice to see that. Just another thing, they do have various, they've been in cystic fibrosis, but they have this painkiller in development. They just have that co-development with CRISPR. So they do have some N in this big biotech, there's definitely some new that should be a tailwind in the coming years.
Mhm. Yeah, and we haven't really seen that flow over to the estimates in a big way just yet, Ed. It does look like estimates for
Hmm.
2023 recently edging higher here, but I guess that's a big question: is when is all of this this big promise, or this big news to total addressable markets here going to flow over into the fundamentals? Because right now we are seeing single digit growth in the most recent quarter and in the outlook here.
Yeah, I mean, that is a question. Another thing is that how much will it kind of move the needle? Because this is pretty big. So it's one thing when you have a new biotech finally gets a drug or has a second drug, and wow, 100 million in sales. I mean, 100 million in sales would be nice, but that would just be sort of an incremental gain for something like Vertex.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Eli Lilly, another drug stock in the spotlight right now, working on an upside reversal this week. Shakeout a couple of sessions ago and right at a key level just below 600. Ed, it seems like that is the key area to watch here for this stock.
Yeah, that 600 level, a lot of little highs in that area. Get above that, I think that would be an early entry within this flat base. It would still be pretty close to the 50-day line. So that would be one way to play that. Obviously, it's had these efforts to move out and it's struggled. So it might be good to get in early before it hits some of these other areas. We'll see. I mean, this is defensive growth. If the market goes on a speculative growth rally, there is somewhat of a defensive growth name to it, though. This is high valuation. It's got the weight loss drug use. They've got Alzheimer's drugs in the pipeline. So there's new on this one as well. It's obviously been rallying a lot this year. So that would be one issue. But this window has consolidated relatively nicely. RS line has come on down, but not that much given the huge run. Uh,
Mhm.
so, I mean, if it breaks out here, you could see that quickly catch up ground again. Something to watch for. There's a lot of names, but this is definitely one I think people should still be keeping on their watch list.
Yeah, and some lumpy numbers on the especially on the bottom line, picking up on the top line. 2 quarters ago, revenue up 28%, last quarter revenue up 37%, and then looking ahead to 2024, annual earnings expected to jump 86%. So, we will keep that outlook in mind and see if it can get above 600 in some heavy volume. And last but not least, in our tickers to watch from today's session, let's take a look at IoT. Ed, we were covering this on IBD Live this morning and finished the day with a nice gain, up 5% in some above average volume, getting above an aggressive entry point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, after the gap up, I mean, you certainly could have bought that gap up, especially early on, but then often a good way to play these earnings gaps is just to see what happens. I mean, honestly, it's just a way to see if it pauses. Sometimes they'll run by you. Sometimes that'll protect you because it'll just go right straight down. And so that's sort of what happened last time. If you look at it, had a big, strong earnings run and then pretty quickly just sort of gave that all back. So uh,
Right.
here's a situation where today, it moved out mostly on the Fed news. That's where almost all the gains came in, the volume came in. So it was moving around. So that really came out at that point. When it was around 35, there was sort of like intraday and daily, there were sort of some levels there where you could have bought it. And this whole area, that's a place to, sort of a high handle or just a little shelf because it's consolidated there. Another chance to buy or maybe add some shares. Really moved on that earnings. This could be one of those things that showing a lot of strength in the after that earnings report, and now moving on from there.
Mhm. And, speaking of numbers, this is definitely a stock that's showing that strong growth on a quarterly basis here at Enterprise Software. We've seen a number of stocks in not only that industry group, but in the broader software sector that have shown bullish price action as of late. So another one to watch in that space.
Absolutely, software's been probably the best group, in this rally.
Yeah, and speaking of, we've got to take a look at Adobe in the sector with earnings out late. The initial reaction here, shares down a little over 5%, Ed. So, what's sort of the early take here on the results from Adobe?
Yeah, they beat views, but what's going on is it looks like their guidance was a little light for the coming year, and they also announced some kind of FTC probe or inquiry. So people don't like to hear that. That's not a good thing about the guidance in a government probe. So yeah, so it's tumbling a little bit after hours. We'll see how that goes because some stocks are sold off and then bounce back that late, the next day or a few days later. Because this has been a leader. It'll be interesting to see what they say on the call. Well, maybe they'll say, well, the AI won't generate here, but we see a lot of momentum down the road. Maybe that'll cheer people up. Oracle didn't do well earlier this week, so you still have to watch for earnings. Even though there's a lot of momentum, you can still see it. And even with some big names where you think, everything's going to be safe, it's like you never know. So just still keep that in mind. But that's just one stock, and this might hit IGV because I think this might be the biggest holding in IGV. But software in general is doing has been doing very well.
Yeah, something to keep in mind tomorrow morning as we see the regular session unfold. If the weakness continues, right, we'll keep an eye on the intraday chart, see if it can establish a low or if it keeps plunging. And if you're in this one, decided to hold into earnings, make those incremental decisions. Don't be a deer in the headlight, and try to handle the action from there. And we'll have to see 600, the 21-day line. Maybe that can act as support by the end of the session if this is going to be a strong stock that, as you mentioned, if it can shake off the weakness. So we'll have to see what comes for this stock tomorrow, but we'll be flexible and react to what we're seeing as it unfolds in real time, not only for Adobe, but also if there is any impact on other names in the group. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of the last big earnings reports on the tech side that we're going to get for several weeks. So this is important.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Ed. And thanks everyone for tuning in. That's it for today. We're going to get the episode up on investors.com in a little bit here. And make sure you tune in tomorrow morning for IBD Live, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details on that. We will see you there. And then we'll also see you right back here tomorrow at the close.